Hi guys, this is Debbie with Debbie J's Crafting Corner. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm making some Valentine's Day cards using the Clear Stamp and Die Club Kit from Spellbinders. I'll have links to all of the products I'm using today in the video description below for your convenience. I guess I'm mixing it up just a little bit. I'm using pattern paper to do my stamping on. This is leftover from one of the cards I made earlier in the week, or was it last week? I don't remember. Anyway, what I'm doing is I'm going to be stamping down with some Wow Clear embossing ink and then heat embossing in gold. This is actually some gold embossing powder that I have from Recollections. Now that the ink is down on my paper, which you can't see, I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle all of that gold embossing powder over the images. And then once that's all done, and I'm sure that everything is covered well, then I will hit it with my heat gun. This part here is probably why so many card makers love heat embossing. Look at that. Look at the embossing powder just turn bright gold. It is just gorgeous. Getting to see the transition when it melts is one of my favorite things about making cards. And especially now that I figured out how to do it without the embossing powder flying all over the place. I have had trouble with that over the years, mostly because the AC is always on here in Florida. That looks so nice. I am so pleased with the way that embossing came out. Now I'm going to basically just go ahead and cut all of these images out using the companion dies that came with this set. Next, I'm taking my alcohol markers out. These are some Spectrum Noir, and just adding a little bit of color to the leaves that are part of the embossed image on this one. Mostly what I'm doing is I'm just filling it in to add a little color. There's a lot of pink there. Pink looks great, but you know, I wanted to have a little bit of contrast there, so I'm doing that. And I'm basically barely touching the tip of my marker down. I have heard people say that with your alcohol markers, it is possible to damage the nibs if you're not really careful. So you see, I'm just barely touching it down to get a little bit of color down. I'm putting the darker shade. This is the AG5. These are my Spectrum Noir. And then I'm adding the AG1 to blend it out, and then I'm going to go back over it a second time so I can get a little bit more of that contrast. After finishing up the leaves, I'm doing the same thing with some pinks. Yes, I'm adding more pink on top of pink. But I did test it on a scrap and made sure that these were some colors that were going to actually show up. So I've got a darker pink and a lighter pink, and I'm going in with both of those to add some color to the flower portion on these little hearts. I did the same thing on the other larger hearts, and now I am going to do some dry embossing on some white cardstock to make part of my backgrounds. Now I'm using the brand new Embossing Club Kit embossing folder. This thing is gorgeous. The embossing folder is called Spreading Love, and it is a full 8.5 by 5.5 inch, so it basically can make the front of 2 card bases with one pass through. This thing is incredible. I mean, you know, I do pretty much only A2 size cards, so I embossed one piece of cardstock, and I'm going to use that for the front of a couple of my cards. So I'm also cutting out some, this is some, I believe this is either gold or rose, I think this is my rose gold foil cardstock that I've got from Michaels, and I'm just cutting that down to be a matting layer behind those pretty embossed dry embossed hearts on that white panel. So we're going to have a lot of white on this, but I'm also bringing in that little bit of gold to trim it up and kind of give it a little bit more of a polished look. So I'm just putting that down with my tape runner onto the front of an A2 size card base, and then I'm going to add one of those pretty embossed it's covered with lots of little hearts, and I'm going to put that on there with some foam tape. So now we've got the gold foil matting layer and that pretty embossed white panel, and now I'm going to add one of the little hearts that I've already heat embossed and colored. I'm going to add that on with some foam tape. Now this foam tape I have is pretty thin, so it works out great. It's not too dimensional. So I'm needing to go through all of these and see what do I want to do. And I'm going to go ahead and pop up my little sentiment too, but I think, you know what, it's getting a little bit lost against that other heart. So I'm going to put some more foil on some foil cardstock on the back of that too, and kind of just make it so that that banner shows up a little bit better. After that, I went ahead and took my paper trimmer and added just that little tiny border around the edges on there. It's real easy on this one. Most paper trimmers have got some type of a thumb guard, and if you line up the edge of the pink, in this case, cardstock, right with the edge, put down about like a 1/16 of an inch of whatever's behind it. So it works out really well. Then I took some Fisker scissors and trimmed it up so it still has that little flag banner on the end. And I'm going to put everything down with some foam tape and with some art glitter glue. I grabbed out this tin that I've got of all these cute little hearts from Target, and I'm going to just add some of that confetti onto the front of my card to finish things off. The foil panel that I'm using as a matting layer for my second card turned out to be just a little bit too big for the panel that I'm using, the embossed panel. So I had to trim that embossed panel down. Now I'm going to go ahead and adhere all of those panels down onto another card base. This time I dived into my stash and grabbed out some of my heavyweight cardstock in pink. I've got quite a few different colors and I never ever use it, but you know what, Valentine's Day is coming up, so I'm going to start using it for this holiday, even if these cards are going to be mostly galentines instead of valentines. Next, I'm going to go ahead, just like I did with the first one, and adhere one of those little hearts down onto the front of my panel as my focal point. This is the one that has that really nice sentiment in there, so it really doesn't need a whole lot more to make this card complete. But, you know, I do still have to add a few of those little heart confetti on the front. For my third card, I decided to use that strip that I had to cut off of the embossed panel and this piece of striped pattern paper. And again, I'm deciding, you know, those things are just getting too lost, so I'm going to have to add that foil to the back of everything. So I am putting my little embossed piece down on here, and then I'm also putting the sentiment down. Actually, there's two sentiments for this one. I'm putting all of that down on this rose gold foil cardstock, and then I'm going to trim everything up, leaving that little touch of gold around the edges. I chose some really light pink cardstock for my card base. I'm just going to make a card base using my EK Success scoring tool, scoring at 4 1/4 and then folding it in half. And that's going to be a perfect color to go behind all of this. It's kind of nice having different shades of pink on the same card. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put down that striped background panel, and that's going to be basically my background. And then I'm going to adhere that white dry embossed with the foil on top of that. Next, just like on the other two cards, I'm putting some foam tape on the back of that heart's focal point, and then I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down. Decided to slide it over to the side just a bit instead of having it in the center, and then I think that those two sentiments really pop once I add those down. I had also cut out and colored some of the little extra bits, so I'm going to go ahead and add one of the little flowers onto my card, tucked in right behind the one of the sentiments, and I think that looks really pretty. Of course, I'm thinking that it's missing something, so this time I'm grabbing out some of my little tiny gems and putting a little scattering of those across the front. Check out this playlist here to see some more cards that I've made using some wonderful products from Spellbinders. You guys have a wonderful day, and remember, if I can make it, you can too. Talk to you soon.